Hello, this is Ed Thompson with Manufacturing Systems Inc., MSI. Today we'd like to talk about how to manage and install multiple versions of Solidworks. I'm not sure if what I'm going to present is common. This is something that we've been using for about 10 years. It's worked very effectively. I haven't seen too many people refer to this or comment about this. It seems like what we may be doing is a little bit more unusual. But it has worked very good for a long time, and it's solved some interesting problems. The first challenge you have when you have multiple versions of SolidWorks is that the parts need to be separated. What happens is that if you open up a part in a newer version and it gets saved, the older version, it will no longer be available to the older version. Therefore, it's very important to keep your parts separated. It's very frustrating to need to go back to an older project, open up the file, and find out, half a dozen of the parts are no longer available because they're now in a newer version. So I'm going to share, just how we've gone about doing this, and so let's get started here. The first thing is to separate the directories. So what we've done under our D directory, and now we're using our D directory because when we switched over to this computer a few years back, we wanted to buy a solid state drive, but to put everything on the C drive was very expensive. So we bought a smaller C drive, solid state drive, and then we bought a larger mass storage drive for D, and we separated these two. This created a little bit of confusion, but overall it hasn't been bad. And so what's happened now is that the C drive keeps getting replaced with a larger and larger solid state drive, and pretty soon we'll be able to abandon this, move everything back to C. But in the meantime, it doesn't really affect this. You can see that every version we have at SolidWorks, we've added more and more. Now I've added a DWG on the front of these things, not because we needed that, but what it did, it allowed this list to be towards the top of the directory tree when we go to look at this. If we started out with SolidWorks, we'd be scrolling down here for the last 10 years, and it would have taken up quite a bit of time. So we added the DWG on there just so that it would be easier to find. What we have here is SolidWorks 14 as example. Let's say we're going to move to SolidWorks 15. We would go in here and we would find all these typical subdirectories that we have copied from version to version all the way back to version 5. And these are pretty common directories, blocks. This is something special. You probably wouldn't have that. The design library, there might be some things in there. Holes. We've customized the holes so the hole wizard has a better description, and as a result of that, we keep carrying those forward. Macros, MSI custom properties, MSI templates, MSI toolbox mods. Some of the toolbox items we've had, we didn't like the description that came in the toolbox, so we went in there and edited a number of the items that we don't use a lot of toolbox, but we'd like to have the description to be proper, so we've done that. And then we call it MSI, or the parts MSI, and this is my own custom library that we've been developing over time. And so what happens is we keep carrying it forward every year, and as a result of that, we end up with a fresh copy, and that doesn't get confused or missaved as we go along. So what we do is we take all these copies, all these versions, and we just drag and drop them down here. Right click, drag and drop, and copy them into the new version. And it takes up a little bit of time, a little bit of hard space, but it's not bad. And then we go through any projects that we may have, and you can either copy them, but most of the time when we choose to go to the newer version, it's really better to drag and drop and move individual projects into the new versions of SolidWorks. So that's been pretty helpful. The next step that we have to do is to show you what happens is when we get the thing loaded, we follow. There's a number of things on YouTube and the web of how to load in multiple copies. That's how to install them. That's not it's not very difficult. But what we have done is we've gone through there and we've made an icon for each of these versions. And there's even other ways of handling this. This is one that we found to be very effective. It's over here on the left, and all we have to do is just pick the one we want. And so one of the things that you see here is we also have a copy settings. So we've also copied that for each version of SolidWorks, and we'll discuss why we've done that, later. So another issue is where do we install SolidWorks? And if we leave it if you follow the installation process, it's always going to want to put it up into C up here in the C drive under some pretty antiquated directory locations. It's not antiquated, but it's really tough to find. What we've just been using the last few years is we go into SolidWorks, the version that we're loading, and we add in the SolidWorks data 2014 in the SolidWorks. We load it, we redirect it into this version so that when we back up this particular directory, everything that we need for this version of SolidWorks is all in one spot. We don't have half of it in this directory and half of it somewhere else, this has been helpful and straightened out some confusion. Next item is setting up the paths. This can be exciting. It's not horrible. It takes a little bit of time. Over the years, we've gotten pretty good at it. It only takes we can do it in about a half an hour in a new version. Here we have version 13. So if you go into Tools, Options, and you see the file locations, and essentially what you have to do is, and you can see there's quite a few of them here, and we just go through it. It's a little bit of painful the first time, but once you do it, it's done for that version. And we go in here item by item, and until we either add, delete, or what do we have to do until we duplicate. And so this is all SolidWorks 13, and so all of these files like the MSI templates, and there's a whole bunch of them here, the blocks, they're all under this particular one. So once we open up SolidWorks 13, all these file directories are pointing to the correct files, and this is very important. So like I say, when you work through all the way through these things, it takes a little while, but after a few years, you get pretty good at it. So what we do because of that, and once we get that, and we go in and do some customization because we like to use the same hotkeys and those kind of things every year. We then we're very careful to run this copy setting wizard, and then we literally make a copy of it right here next to the version. Now, as it turns out, SolidWorks claims, and it does work most of the time, that you can run more than one SolidWorks version at a time with no trouble. As an example, here we have version 13, and here we have version number 12. Both are functioning at the same time without any issues. What I have found, though, in the past is every once in a while, something strange will happen, and these settings will not end up being correct. And so what we've just done as a general practice is right next to the version, if there's any issues, we just go back there, hit the rebuild, the copy settings, and we're ready to continue on with hardly any delay at all. And for a lot of times, there isn't any issue, but every once in a while there is. And one of the things that if you have any suspicion that something's not quite right, one of the best ways to do that is you go to Tools, come down here to Options, and it's really quick. But if we look at the whole wizard toolbox, you will see here that it needs to be under the right directory. So this is version SolidWorks 13, and therefore this needs to be where we are storing SolidWorks 13. And if it's 12 or whatever version it is, but if this is correct, then you probably don't will have any other problems with with that particular version operating correctly, which is pretty handy to. That's a quick check, and also there's a fairly quick fix if something's messed up. So like I say, we just pull that up there and go run one of these things, and then restart SolidWorks, and everything's great. In fact, I think in the newer version you don't even have to shut down SolidWorks to do that. So the next item is saving the settings manager, which we just discussed. Um, more information. There is more information available on the MSI website. There's some white papers there, just in general. Let's see if I can find that for you here. Here is msioregon.com. Here's under the store, and if you see down here, there's these white papers. They're all free. You can download many of them. The one we're talking about here is the let's see, the approve. Anyway, here it is, setting up managing multiple versions of SolidWorks. So if you have any questions or comments, you can reach me through the MSI website. The next presentation, the reason why I went over this is might be pretty basic for most of you, but one of the reasons why I did this is that the next presentation we plan on doing is how to migrate parts from newer to older versions of SolidWorks. This has been an issue that we've struggled with for quite a few years, and we've kind of hit upon a good solution, and you can see how we approach that in our next presentation. Thank you. Bye.